Who's strong and brave, here to save the American way? Who vows to fight like a man for what's right night and day? Who will campaign door to door to America? Carry the flag shore to shore for America. From Hoboken to Spokane, the Star-Spangled Man with a plan. Cheer. I had a lyric sheet. Anyway, welcome back, everyone, to StillerBros at the Movies, where today we celebrate what America should be, not what it is. Hold on. Yeah, that's the right way. Anyway, Captain America, Brave New World. Not New World Order like it was supposed to be before someone informed the marketing team that that's actually kind of a Nazi thing. Yeah. We're here at the fourth Captain America movie. 14 years ago, we never thought we would see a second Captain America movie, let alone a fourth Captain America movie. And Chris Evans is looking a little different these days, I guess. Yeah, nobody really seemed to tell him what's going on. But back in 2011, when Chris Evans took on the role of Captain America for the first time, Cap was one of the biggest Marvel characters, but he wasn't exactly take over the world big. Then Chris Evans took on the role and made a pretty good movie, and then we got the Avengers, which changed how the Marvel universe was perceived. And a lot of people consider Captain America: The Winter Soldier to be somewhat of an improvement on the first Captain America movie, and the biggest thing that it did was introduce us to the new character of Sam Wilson, aka the Falcon. And over the next 5 years, we got us to know Falcon a little bit more, and eventually, at the end of Endgame, for spoilers for a 6-year-old movie at this point, dear God, Chris Evans handed the shield over to who Sam Wilson played by the always charming Anthony Mackie. So after Falcon and the Winter Soldier basically was a big fill-in for let's try to get an actual character out of Sam Wilson as more than just Captain America's buddy, Captain America, the franchise, is now handed off to Anthony Mackie in Brave New World. Yes. And so what kind of outing is this new Captain America in? But a world of government conspiracy, going back to the political thriller roots of Captain America: The Winter Soldier. We also added some supporting players to Sam Wilson's characters because, obviously, we're kind of sort of starting from scratch because we're not following Steve Rogers anymore. We are following Sam. Steve Rogers' 3 movies were being built on the idea of a man too pure for the world he was living in, suddenly thrust into a world that he helped to create through his actions in 1945, and suddenly finding himself a man out of time. Yes, and now we have Sam Wilson, who is a man very much brought up in the world that we've brought up in. Obviously, these are things touched on in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, including with the returning character in this movie of Isaiah Bradley. And it very much is built on the idea of this is a black man as Captain America in a political climate that we didn't really think was going to go the opposite direction that this movie seems to be saying anything about. Yes, and part of that is the fact that when they were shooting this, they were very much hoping that we were going to be going into a second Biden term. And that's, well, we're just going to avoid talking about him. Even though the president being a giant reddish hulking monster who has anger issues is very fitting suddenly. Speaking of the president in this movie, he is not played by certain people. He is instead played by the usually very awesome Harrison Ford. Yes. Because William Hurt, who originally played the character of Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross, is unfortunately passed away a few years ago. But Marvel clearly felt that this was a character that needed to live on, and not like T'Challa, where this character in a lot of people's minds is completely connected to this actor's performance. So instead they got Harrison Ford, who for the first time in a long time really seems to be having fun with himself. Yeah, and I think part of that we can really contribute to the fact that
the pandemic gave him a lot of downtime, and he really was getting antsy about staying at home and not getting to work.
Up until recently, Harrison Ford was like, I'm at the point in my life where I'm only going to do one project a year, and now suddenly he's doing like 4 projects a year because he's got his Yellowstone spin-off, he's in Shrinking, and he's actually really hilarious from what I've seen in that. He's in a bunch of MCU projects because he signed on to a role that requires him to be in multiple Marvel projects.
And of course he did Indiana Jones 5 2 years ago.
But all in all, Harrison Ford coming into this franchise is fun, especially since one of Anthony Mackie's first big roles was in a Harrison Ford movie, so it's kind of a reunion of sorts.
Also along for the ride is the MCU theatrical debut of one Joaquin Torres, aka the brand new Falcon, portrayed very differently than he is in the comic, which I'm okay with because in the comics it's kind of gross.
But in this version, he's Sam's army buddy who is now putting on the Falcon wings now that Sam is switching out his old Falcon wings for a new red, white, and blue set that was made in Wakanda. Also, after years of the internet complaining about how we're not talking about how in the Marvel Universe there's a giant statue of a god basically sticking out of the middle of the ocean, they're finally contributing to that.
Speaking of years of people complaining, we have the returns of Tim Blake Nelson and Liv Tyler.
Yes, the fact that they decided to make this movie not a sequel to any of the Captain America movies, but of The Incredible Hulk, which isn't the best of the Marvel movies, not by a long shot, but as a just average to early oddies, his action movie is probably completely underrated. Yeah. I'm really happy, especially since we wanted Tim Blake Nelson's character Samuel Stearns to come back for a long time as the iconic character, the leader. Granted, it would have been nice if he had been in like a Hulk movie, but you know, we gotta do what we gotta do.
Yeah, I'm especially fascinated because we don't know what he looks like yet.
They've been very careful to keep him out of the promotional materials, except for like Funko Pops and McDonald's toys.
Yeah, and finally, we would be remiss if we did not mention the MCU debut of one Giancarlo Esposito.
Yes, and while he's not playing any of the like dozens of characters that anybody thought he was going to play immediately because they were like, oh, he should be Magneto, he should be this, he should be that, he should be this iconic villain, he should be this iconic villain. And then a lot of people being like, hey guys, maybe he should be like Professor X or someone, you know, like maybe give him something outside of playing like the same kind of shifty villainous character. Instead, he's playing the leader of the Serpent Society, a somewhat lesser known group of Marvel villains.
Yeah.
So that'll still be kind of fun because he gets to like do kind of action-y stuff instead of just being like one of those villains that's just kind of planning stuff.
Even though because that's kind of what he's been typecast as. But we'll see what happens. We have kind of gone off on a lot of tangents and stuff so we've burned a lot of our opening time, but we'll have more to talk about when we get to it.
But the important thing is that Captain America Brave New World is, well, it's a movie that exists. From what I've seen, I've seen the one action scene that they've put out, and it's kind of meh.
We'll see what happens, but
Malcolm Spellman, the writer of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, did a pretty good job, and I think with that, and I think the fact that he's at least co-writing this one says that maybe, just maybe, we will have some decent work on it. And who knows, maybe this will just be a pretty decent political action thriller, the likes of which Winter Soldier was kind of attempting to play off of.
Yeah, but we'll talk to you guys after the jump.
I don't know why people are more negative about that than they are. I thought it was fine.
It was pretty good.
I mean, I don't think it's not as good as Winter Soldier, but one thing that you need to understand about why we're probably more forgiving of a lot of this movie's flaws, and there's a couple of them, not damning flaws, but little ones, is the fact that we spent a good chunk of the late '80s, early 2010s, basically inoculating ourselves with kind of mid to bad political thrillers. We spent a lot of time watching Eagle Eye, so we are pretty good with, you know what, this is fine. And I'm going to point this out. This is a way better movie than Eagle Eye, and not just because this has a Hulk in it.
No, but this is also probably the most political thriller that Marvel's made so far with the Captain America franchise.
Now, am I saying that this is the best Marvel movie of the last, 5 years? No, definitely not. It's just fine, and I think that we need to remember that sometimes a movie is allowed to be fine without us deciding that the studio that funded it is going to die soon.
And obviously, I'm gonna be very honest right now, I don't get why people would be so negative about it.
Well,
because there's nothing downright offensive about it. It's a pretty standard Marvel fare at this point. Let's just get into it a little deeper.
So, I think Anthony Mackie's really locked it down on what he needs to do to be this new version of Sam Wilson, to be Captain America. Steve Rogers was very much the perfect embodiment of who America should be. This near picture perfect example of a good person who was just allowed to take all the goodness within him and bring it to the outside to become this super powerful person thanks to super soldier serum.
Because that's been pointed out before. Steve Rogers was a perfect human being. The super soldier serum just made him better. But the thing that makes Sam Wilson such a different Captain America is he doesn't have super soldier serum. He's a regular guy wearing the stars and stripes and carrying a shield, fighting off the international terrorists and Hulks.
And while every Captain America movie before this was Steve Rogers is morally perfect, he's morally in the right, his arc is just basically coming to terms with the fact that he's living in a world where that's basically an old-fashioned ideal and he needs to figure out a compromise between the two. Sam Wilson actually does need to have an arc of, I need to figure out how I'm going to be a better person within this world.
And first of all, I'm going to preface this by saying we're two white guys who have the system has not in any way has not really fucked us over in any considerate way, but with the kind of stories they need that need to be told with this Captain America, can't have Captain America be a black man and not talk about what it's like to be a black man in this country.
And they briefly touch on it in here. If you want that kind of story, go watch The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but here they only briefly touch upon that, mostly because this is a story about Sam Wilson dealing with a big international crisis.
Yeah. So one thing I want to bring up, though, is that's kind of on the negative side, is that Julius Ona is not the best action director.
We didn't talk much about who the director of this particular movie is. The guy's name is Julius Ona. He's an African director, and he has directed a couple of indie films. His big break was a couple of years ago with the Cloverfield Paradox. And this one was basically him being like, okay, now I'm going to make a huge blockbuster, and occasionally he'll turn in a halfway decent action scene, but then there's other times where it's like quick cuts and weird angles, like one of the first big action beats from this movie is shot top down in a way that's just kind of weird to look at.
But also there's just the fact that it is that in one of the more centralized action sequences at the beginning of the movie, it's kind of hard to figure out which person we're supposed to be looking at right now, because we're cutting around a lot and the geography is a little the room is kind of screwed up, so we don't, and the people that are shooting at everybody is just kind of all mixed into the group, and we don't know which one are the good guys and which ones are the bad guys.
Now, granted, it does get better as the movie goes on. A couple of the action scenes do actually start to feel a lot better, particularly the brutal final fight scene is just incredibly knocked down, drag out, blood spilling.
You are sitting there watching, and you are feeling impacts, and you're and it just is one of those. It's kind of one of the more brutal action sequences in a Marvel movie so far.
But it's also one of those things where it's like you gotta get through a couple of uncomfortable ones to get there. Then there's a whole point where character motivations kind of switch from scene to scene, and I have to assume that was partially due to the fact that this was reshot a bit, and the fact that there's like 5 different writers attached to this.
Yeah, that's also the weirdest. One of the weirder things is the fact that there is a lot of reshoots, and if you know the telltale signs of reshoots, you can kind of tell, like the fact that a lot of expositional dialogue is being told where you can't see the character giving the exposition's mouth move.
And there's, like I said, sometimes a character will be like, hey, this guy is awesome, let's be friends with it, let's try to be friendly with him, and then the very next scene they're like, this character's a bastard, why did I even try to trust him?
Yeah.
It's a lot of that. And once again, it's early in the movie, so once it gets a little deeper in and it kind of feels like, okay, we're on a roll, we've got this going, it's also just kind of, okay, we're also just trying to we need to figure out how to lock this in to be sure this is what we're doing.
Yeah. Also, it's a little sluggish because this movie comes in at a little under 2 hours, but it does feel like a little bit long, like it's a longer thing. It feels like it's an appropriate length, though. I wouldn't want it any longer or any slower or any shorter.
Yeah, I don't know what I'd cut to make it shorter. There's not like it seems like a lot. There seems like to be a lot of fat trimmed. Like I don't even know if I'd cut the gratuitous cameo out of it.
No, I love that cameo. I don't want that going anywhere.
And I don't think that it would. And I think cutting it would actually kind of rip away a big central part of Sam's character arc of him realizing that.
Also, it feels like there's a lot of retreading of some stuff that they covered in Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Yeah, like, we get it. Sam, you don't feel comfortable with the shield. You don't feel comfortable stepping into Steve's shoes, but it's also like, can we move on to the next part of this character's arc?
Yeah.
It kind of feels like we're okay, we know that this character's coming back for Avengers 5. We just need to make sure that he's in place for when we eventually get the Avengers back together.
But back to the positive stuff. Danny Ramirez is great in this. We got a new Falcon. It's awesome.
I like the fact that they actually made him look like a bird, as compared to Sam Wilson in the MCU, where it was like he's a guy with a jetpack and wings and a pair of goggles. But here it's like, no, we're gonna design his helmet to look kind of like a bird's ear.
Well, it might very well just be because of how he's depicted in the comics, where he's basically a mutant where he was basically mutated into becoming a part bird, and that's why he's the Falcon.
And I really liked Harrison Ford in this. He seemed to really understand what kind of role he was in,
and he was having a blast doing it for the most part. He definitely
you watch him at Comic-Con and a bunch of the promo stuff, and you can definitely tell he really liked the idea of so I get to just pretend to be angry the whole time and to have fun, and everybody will just like it. Okay, cool.
Yeah. And then there's the return of then Giancarlo Esposito. Hopefully we get to see more of him.
They seem to be setting him up for bigger things. I don't know if he's going to be a big threat throughout the entire MCU, but he's definitely going to...
If we come back around to Cap 5, we'll probably see him again.
They'll probably build him up, or maybe they'll use him in a certain other street-level heroes TV series or movie or whatever.
Yeah. And then we have the return of Tim Blake Nelson, which when they revealed what he looks like, our theater, you could hear a pin drop.
Which is good, because we had a bunch of annoying kids sitting next to us.
Yeah.
Like, these 13-year-old boys were making raspberries with their mouths as if it was the funniest thing through most of it. And
then the second the credits rolled, they just went off.
Which, kind of glad, because it meant we could enjoy the credits without listening to them just making fart noises, because it's the funniest thing in the world. Because I was 13 once too. There was a time when fart noises were the epitome of comedy. But I'm also 31 years old now, and I want children to and I would like it if the children in my movie theaters would stop making full-on conversation unrelated to the movie in the movie theater. But
specifically when the movie's playing anyway.
Yeah, but it's also the fact that ironically, we went to see this movie on President's Day.
Yes.
So that's why there were way more kids in the theater than we were prepped for.
Because we go to the movies in the middle of a Monday afternoon, you assume that there probably aren't going to be any kids around, but we have been out of town for the last week, so we completely forgot that President's Day was coming up.
So one way or another, we ended up in a theater with a bunch of little kids. That's got nothing to do with the movie. We just thought we'd bring up how weirdly coincidental that was.
Although I want to know what some of the younger kids were thinking watching this, because
there was a dad with his two like super young kids way in front of us.
Yeah, there was like we were saying like 6-year-old, like probably 6-year-old girls and stuff in there, and I'm like, what are they getting out of this? It's not
even like what are they getting out of this? It's like, is this okay? Because this is a movie that really pushes how far the PG-13 can go.
But also, they're probably bored. There's a lot of political talk in this.
This is a movie specifically about international relations, trade agreements. I'm not saying this is like prequel levels of, do you not understand that this is supposed to be an action movie for kids? I'm definitely saying that it's kind of weird that a bunch of 6-year-olds would be trying to hold on to this.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is going to be one of those movies where they just decide, oh, we're going to enjoy this later when we're adults and we understand the political ramifications, but I don't know.
Yeah.
But one way or another, Captain America Brave New World is fine. I don't know what the Rotten Tomatoes score is on it still, but I know that a lot of the critics seem to be more down on this one, but I thought it was fine.
Yeah, it's pretty okay.
This isn't like Secret Invasion bad, but it's also not Winter Soldier amazing.
Yeah.
I'd consider giving it a watch for anyone who is at least a little intrigued by the idea of the most over-the-top Marvel political drama ever.
Yeah.
So, that's it for right now. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to this channel, tell us what you thought of Captain America Brave New World in the comments below, and don't forget...
Also, check us out on Letterboxd.
Yeah, links in the description below. And don't forget to tune in next time when, in another life, I would have loved doing laundry in Texas with you. Bye.